Hey, what's up, you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring you my review of this week's episode of Van Helsing on Syfy. This week we've seen the second episode of Season 2, which was called In Redemption. And I gotta say, right off the bat, I really liked this episode. I was really on the hype train for Van Helsing this week. I'll admit I was a little bit more lukewarm about the premiere last week, which I thought was fine. I thought it was pretty good. But for some reason, after I did my review and a few days went by, for some reason the premiere clicked with me a little bit more. And I'm definitely on this Van Helsing hype train right now. I am definitely in the mood for it. I'm ready. And I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I think it was one of the best episodes we've seen in the series so far. This and maybe a couple of others from the first season are probably some of my favorites. At the end of the season, I may even do like a ranking of my favorite episodes so far, like top 5 or 10 or something. But yeah, this just had a lot going down, a lot of elements to it. For some reason, I forgot to put Axel in my thumbnail. Excuse me. Spoilers. There's spoilers in the title, so don't blame me. But besides Axel, it had a lot of other things going on as well. With the title of the episode, In Redemption, I just felt like I was a little bit worried that there was going to be like one or two characters that could die potentially. Because at first I thought In Redemption it could have either been about Doc, of course Rukia Bernard's character, or it could have been about Muhammad potentially. I could have gone either way on that. Because Muhammad, on one hand, he's trying to make things up, to Vanessa in a way, or sort of atone for himself. And after the death of his sister last week, I was saying in last week's review, I got why Vanessa punched him the way she did and everything, and sort of disregarded him. With her tone in certain ways, and how she's going about plans and such. I got that, but at the same time, you gotta see where Muhammad's going from as well. So I think that carried weight, but I still think it meant a lot that he was willing to stay behind the way he was to protect Vanessa and let them get away and everything. So I don't expect Muhammad to betray him again in the future or anything like that. I think he's trying to sort of build himself back a little. And this brings me into like one of my few gripes or sort of questions with the episode, I guess, more so. Is that when Muhammad finally gets Vanessa and Dylan to run off so he supposedly can hold off Anastasia and the other vampire guards, this masked, ninja-like figure shows up and slaughters all the vampires, killing Anastasia instantly. Some kind of thrown blade of some sort going through the back of her head and everything. Excuse me, I have sauce in my face. That's kind of unprofessional. But anyway, excuse me, I apologize. But that was sort of surprising, just because we had already lost Rebecca in the premiere, which some of us were worried about, and we did. I found her to be the most intriguing villain on the show, so it was disappointing to have her die that quickly. Again, I don't know if Laura Manel wanted off, or they had just chosen to write it that way. But so I thought we were lacking sort of a equally interesting female antagonist like that, and for a couple minutes there I was willing to buy into Anastasia. I was willing to see what she could do, and I liked her at first. We've seen a little bit of her in season 1. But in this, I like the shots of her walking down the tunnel, just how that was lit and everything. That's another thing with, Flesh and, who he's traveling with right now. I like the mood of, them going through the woods and everything. I thought that was really good. Just, again, the lighting and everything I thought was on point. But then they just kill off Anastasia, and, that bugged me a little bit, because I feel like now we're lacking sort of an interesting villain. I do like Dimitri, sort of more of that classic, vampire character. But I just sort of want like a more eccentric, interesting to watch, female villain. So I'm wondering if that's we're gonna get someone pretty major later into the season or something. I don't know. Not that there's a quota they have to fill or anything, but I just feel like we need someone like Rebecca or Anastasia on the show, to be sort of another threat to Vanessa. But other than that, I thought that was a pretty cool scene. I'm curious to see who this character was that saved Muhammad there. Although she left him to die, so he or she clearly has their own agenda in mind, not just to save people and be a hero or something along those lines. I think I say her because I think we've seen her in the previews before. I think I've seen some kind of casting news, so I believe it is another female character. So maybe she'll do it. Although I don't believe her to be a clear-cut villain, obviously. Now, as far as Doc's story this week, it was good and bad to see Rakia Bernard again. Because her whole journey in season 3. I mean, not season 3. Excuse me. Season 1 and what she did to Axel. That completely comes full circle against her in this episode. We see her hold up with this other group of survivors. Sort of gaining a reputation of being a good person, but eventually she discovers that, I forget her name for some reason, but the little girl who's notorious for always wandering around, and she somehow survives, but her whole group doesn't. We find out that she's been feeding a vampire, and it turns out to be the turned Axel that we've seen at the end of season 1. Who's been trying to resist his vampire side, not fully give in to it, not, kill as many innocent people as he can. And I found Axel to be pretty interesting to watch this week. It was good to see Jonathan Scarf back, of course, but Axel is almost more interesting as a vampire than he was as a human. Although when he finds Vanessa, I'm sure not too long afterward, she'll bite and, turn him back, most likely. But I still found his back and forth with Doc to, be pretty deserved and sort of, again, that sort of full circle role reversal kind of thing. Strangely enough, though, it was kind of funny when Axel was just watching her get chased around by the vampire, and, yelling for his help, and she kept hitting the vampire with, like, this, the cooler, or the, whatever it is. So that was kind of funny. There was no music. Just seeing her running around sort of in circles trying to kick off the vampire and stuff. And I read in an interview, with the showrunner, and he said, it was basically meant to come off a little bit later like that. So I found that scene kind of fun. And then you also have Julius this week as well, who we'll talk more about in a second. But another scene I really liked this week was between Vanessa and Dylan, of course. When Vanessa finally gets her away for a bit. And we find out that Dylan can actually survive in the sun and not, be burned or really affected by it at all. Part of some of the experimentations she went through, most likely. So I find that to be pretty interesting. We get our most human moment with Dylan as well. I still feel like it's going to have to be Vanessa having to put her down in the end, perhaps. That's just like a prediction, but maybe that would be too predictable. I don't know. There's pros and cons to going whichever way they go with it, but we'll see what they do when it comes down to it. But I found the scene nonetheless to be pretty touching because for a second you get that connection in between Vanessa and Dylan again, that we've seen a little bit of in the very beginning of the series last season. And Dylan's able to remember saying her and Vanessa share as they go back and forth, and it was kind of nice until she hears other vampires nearby, so she starts freaking out again. She slits Vanessa's throat to get away. Luckily, Vanessa is able to heal and eventually catch up with her. It turns out to be Julius out there. Good to see him again. We get a pretty decent back and forth fight between Vanessa and Julius, as well as being put out there that Vanessa supposedly killed Rebecca, or she at least talks about burning her face, and this pisses Dylan off because her vampire side seeing Rebecca as sort of her mother. But of course, we know Vanessa was the one that killed Rebecca, but still. But in the end, it ends up being Vanessa that bites Julius and, curing him. So that was pretty surprising. Although I think we've seen Julius as human in one of the previews, so that part was kind of spoiled already. I kind of wish they would have kept that as a complete surprise. But still, it's nonetheless a pretty surprising development and potential dynamic here. And he just immediately thanks Vanessa. It's like bloodthirsty, savage vampire general type of guy. He turns out to be, probably one of the one of the most regretful of them, perhaps, or one of the most, just sort of weighed down by what he's done, potentially. Who knows? Because they're all humans at one point, so it's kind of interesting, no matter how long they've been around. It makes me wonder what Rebecca would have been like, or what her whole story was, or something. I don't know. But yeah, so Julius is going to be, traveling with Dylan and Vanessa for a while, so I think that should be interesting. So I thought this was all around a very good episode, despite the questionable decision with killing off Anastasia. I think this is a pretty good one. I'm rating it about an 8.8, 8.9 out of 10. I'm still very eager to see where season 2 is going to go. I, again, have a lot of confidence in where the show could go in the long run, just as we found out more and more about Vanessa herself, which I think is coming later this season, but we'll have to see. I also like the opening, the whole bloodbath thing. That was awesome. After that brutal trap last week, we've seen Dimitri and Anastasia enjoying some Game of Thrones, incest-style bathing together. That was a nice visual, I suppose. So, hope you guys enjoyed this review. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.